Hey, everybody. Good afternoon and welcome to Cultivating Community, a speaker series. Thank you all so much for being here on this lovely, gloomy Pacific Northwest day. Appreciate you all being here in order to be in community and learn and grow and share with one another. Do the next slide. Again, today's webinar or today's panel is Cultivating Community Healing. We have some really amazing practitioners with us today to be able to share a little bit about the work that they have been doing in community and to share some skills, some tools, and some knowledge with everyone in the room. First and foremost, we wanted to offer a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are on the homeland of the first peoples of this land, the Duwamish, Muckleshoot, Puyallup, Snoqualmie, Stillaguamish, Suquamish, and Tulalip tribes. We raise our hands to honor all of the descendants of the Coast Salish people. We thank them for their hospitality as the first people of this land and for our continuing use of the natural resources of their ancestral homeland. We honor the immense, immeasurable, and often unrecognized contributions and sacrifices of the Coast Salish and Indigenous people, and we acknowledge the ongoing disparities, racism, and political invisibility experienced by Coast Salish and Indigenous peoples of this land. We thank you to our partners at SUN for this land acknowledgement. And now I hand it over to Kai to provide a little bit more context on today's speaker series.
I was muted. Thanks for being here today. We are here with Communities of Opportunity. Communities of Opportunity is a partnership between King County, our public health department, as well as the Seattle Foundation. And we work deeply with community, and we're a community-driven initiative focusing on 3 different strategies to impact the inequities that we see in our community. So we do this by focusing on work that is occurring in our place-based and cultural communities. We also are working on policy and systems change work, as well as the learning community that helps to amplify the learning and the stories and the work that's happening in our communities, as well as providing opportunities to build capacity and to build relationships. We focus on the result areas of health, housing, economic opportunities, and community connections, and focus on working with the work that is driven and rooted in our communities. Next slide. So part of the learning community and uplifting our community stories is this Cultivating Community speaker series. We've been fortunate to partner with La Roxay Productions and BDS as the designers of this speaker series. And we're now on our 5th session, and you're here with us today, deepening our connection to healing practices and hearing more about what's been happening in our communities. Next. Our last speaker series, as Roxana frames our speaker series, she talks about it as a journey. And so our journey brought us to thinking about how our communities are cultivating abundance. We were so honored to have a really amazing panel of Senator Tawana Nobles, Rebecca Berry, Alejandra Perez, and Alejandra Triss. They represent Black Futures Co-op, Skyway Coalition, as well as Washington Dream Coalition and Comunidad Latina de Vashon, as well as the Unincorporated BIPOC Community Economic Alliance. And we were excited to have one of our COO staff members back, Dion Foster, who now works with Progress Alliance. In that conversation, we started the conversation actually thinking about scarcity and where the idea of scarcity comes from. And our panelists really were sharing with us that scarcity doesn't exist. It's actually been created by racist systems. And that many of us who are working in these systems continue to perpetuate this scarcity model in our funding by our own limitations that we think we can share resources and are intentional not being invested in relationship. We need to change the ways that we're investing and start to invest in spaces that are open and create opportunities for community to build power. We also need to start thinking, both philanthropy and funders and government, about the ways that we've created barriers for our communities to have access to resources. And our panel really affirms that abundance is real and exists in our communities. We can uplift this abundance by centering the vital contributions of our community, by acknowledging the ways in which they're contributing to our communities with their joy, genius, histories, and expertise. And we also need to think about that we're investing in both people and places and power that exist in our communities. So what else can we be doing? Our panelists shared with us some suggestions that we can take with us. And to think about how we're funding sustainability of work, the capacity and well-being of the people that are doing the work. Thinking not just about funding parity for communities of color, but actually funding reparations for the decades of disinvestment and overinvestment that's been done within white-led organizations and white communities. We also need to be thinking about shifting the world and our view from both the creation of spaces for not just providing services, but also providing spaces for thinking, being in connection and building together so that we can begin to imagine and create the new ways of being that we imagine for our communities. Next slide. So what brought us here today on our journey, cultivating community healing? Well, originally we were thinking about this speaker series as a way to think about partnership work and the deep partnership that we do in communities of opportunity with our organizations, with our stakeholders. And we started to think about the importance of healing and repair in terms of partnership. And as we are nearing our almost 18 months now of the COVID-19 pandemic, Roxana and I and Whitney as well, who works with the COO staff, started to think differently about this session. We've been hearing how tired, overwhelmed, and isolated all of us still are, and that many of us are carrying burdens of grief and trauma of this time, but also the stress and complex trauma that we face living in a country under the systems of oppression, of racism, many other systems of oppression that we all exist under. And the work of COO is invested in changing those systems and policies of the inequities that we see. And it's a heavy burden to hold that work of stewarding change while simultaneously living under these structures. And our last panel taught us that it's never a burden to live within our communities. Our communities show great resilience, creativity, beauty, joy, strength, and that this resilience is fostered by individual and collective practices of healing. And so that is what brought us here today, to think about the ways that we can center healing in our lives, in our work, in our organization, so that we can continue to do this hard work. And to really build on the inherent ability that we all hold, both individually and collectively, to heal. So today I'm honored to have this amazing panel with us, and I will be passing it on to the rest of our team. Oh, just kidding. Was that for me? Well, okay. If you have questions, you can go ahead and put them in the Q&A button. If you would like to listen and see the words on the screen, there is, well, I'm not seeing it on my end. We should have a closed caption button at the bottom of your screen. It's possible that it's not there. And if you've not seen it, type it in the chat and we will see if we can remedy that.
Thanks, Kai. All right. So I'm going to just add a little on to what Kai said regarding this journey that we've been on for a while. So one of the resounding themes throughout all of the past speaker series is this need to really heal, to do our personal work, our collective work, in order for our communities and our organizations to really thrive and regurgitate or repeat the harms that have been done onto our communities. And so today, our session is actually a little different than the other ones before. While we will ask some questions towards the end of the session, we really asked for practitioners in community who do healing work, who do facilitate healing work, to come and do a skill share. Because we know that one of the things that we need is to learn and to how do we do the work of healing in our communities. And so we're really excited to have the practitioners that we have here today to talk a little bit more about how they go about their work and to provide some insights, some tools, and some knowledge for you all to take and hopefully integrate into the things and the work that you all are doing. So at this time, I am going to go ahead and introduce our moderator for this event. Matt Echohawk-Hayashi is the Principal Organization Development and Leadership Consultant for Headwater People. He offers organizations a variety of strategic consulting services such as organization design, strategic planning, change management, process improvement, retreat planning and facilitation, and executive coaching. His passion is to help connect groups to the core mission of their work through collaborative and innovative learning and whole organizational health. So thank you, Matt, so much for being here. And I will now pass it on to you.
Thank you, Roxana. And thank you, everybody, for being here. So we're going to kind of get into like a grounding moment right now. So first things first, if you're comfortable, great. If you're not, try to get comfortable in your seat. If you can, put your feet on the ground and sit back in your chair. If you're short like me and you got to choose one or the other, I would suggest your feet on the ground. And just take a moment to just appreciate that you're solid to the earth right now. And if you're comfortable, go ahead and close your eyes. And I want you to picture a person, but not just anybody. Picture in particular someone that you love a lot. So this could be a child or a parent, a grandparent, a partner, a bestie, a fur baby, someone that you love a lot. And just imagine this person sitting in front of you. And in your heart and in your head that you would speak this over whoever it is that you're thinking of. May you be safe and protected from all harm. May you always remember your strength, your beauty, and your resilience. May you find true peace, true happiness, and belonging. And may you be liberated from all manner of suffering. And one more step to this is that maybe you've glanced at the participants on this call. Maybe you know the people on this panel personally or indirectly. But there's a whole bunch of us. There's 45 of us look on this participants, and all of us are neck deep or over our heads in the humanity of the moment. And for some of us, we've had amazing weeks. Some of we've had very difficult weeks. And for a lot of us, a little bit of both. And I know you don't know everybody on this call, but try to, in your mind, imagine all of us, all 45 of us, and picture them in front of you. For some, maybe their faces won't be super clear, but we can kind of picture this beautiful crowd of people who are interested in healing. And over these, what would be 44 people, may you be safe and protected from all harm. May you always remember your strength, your beauty, and your resilience. May you find true peace, true happiness, and belonging. And may you be liberated from all manner of suffering. And as you, we'll kind of close this grounding moment, but just kind of acknowledge and recognize what it feels to be thinking those kinds of blessings over people. And also think about what it's like right now for these people to be thinking the same thing over you. And again, I want to just welcome you to this space, especially our esteemed panelists. I'm just so honored to be a part of this community here and part of like the COO friend group. Thank you for letting me share this space with you. And you're not here to hear from me. So with that, I'm going to introduce our first panelist. Professor Orisade Awodola is a root psychologist, author, lecturer, traditional healer, researcher, and founder of the Institute of African-Centered Thought in Seattle, Washington. She launched root psychology in 2014 as an academic discipline in her doctoral work based on her ancestral healing identity model, which is in a prep stage for review as an evidence-based model. Pausing, huge deal. For more than 25 years, Awodola globally facilitated ancestral healing workshops at London's King College, its affiliate, the Maudsley Institute of Psychiatry with Chief Kola Abiola in London, England, and the W.E.B. Du Bois Cultural Center in Accra, Ghana. She's the director of the Turning Point program at Hillcrest Children's Center, Bald Eagle Center in Anacostia, a southeastern area of the District of Columbia Federal City Recovery Program, where she specializes in co-occurring disorders known as MIDD in King County, with adults and clients who referred to the Washington School of Psychiatry in the District of Columbia for therapy. In addition to IACT, she currently serves on the King County Behavioral Health Advisory Board, is the Racial Inequities Chair of the BHAB Subcommittee. And I want to just, I get to spend just a little bit of time with Professor Orisade and other Zoom meetings during these times. And I just want to reflect to my experience is that her ability to help us understand the context of what's affecting us and why it's affecting us, but in a framework that centers the Black experience, not just affirmatively, but effectively. It's just a powerful, powerful thing with this. So it's just the time I just want to say, I'm so grateful for you and your work, and I'm going to give you the floor.
I'd like to thank you all that were involved in pulling this series together and inviting me to be on the panel. I'd like to begin with a question that was posed was, what role does the work of healing have in our personal lives? Well, I'd like to share this document, first of all, and say this is how it begins, with how we think. There's something called a thought disorder, which is racism as a mental illness. So in talking about that, it brings us back to how we grew up. 3 ways you've changed, what was good, what was not good, and how does that, one more thing I want to share, how does that impact how you think here? This is how it begins. The new information you receive is processed through what I call a mental crusher, and it goes into what you already believe. Now, if what you believe doesn't go along with what you're learning, there's going to be a conflict. And what you believe is generational. You see, what you learn from 0 to 5, you come here with that predisposition. But after 5, it's all about external stimuli. So the answer to the question of in our personal lives, where does the healing work? What role is it? It begins with you and identity, and identify who you are in order to understand your purpose in life. When you don't know who you are, you tend to become the they. The they is the people that I'm Creole, but I'm Black Creole, African Creole. So when we talk about what white people did, and we doing it, And we're trying to put a Eurocentric paradigm of oppression into an African centered, a Native American centered, a Asian centered paradigm. There's going to be a conflict because that system was not designed to be healing. And then we become the they. And so then the collective of our organizations to support each other, it doesn't happen. We have a conflict because we've become the they. The very system we talk about that's oppressing us, we become the facilitators of that system. So now it all begins when we have leaders, politicians, and all of that, all of those people that lead these organizations and systems and government and corporations and nonprofits and so on, that are not able to identify with who they are as a person, then that is when we have a problem. And I'm going to share this. Ancestral healing is the ancestral healing identity theory proposes that through a course of actions, understanding individual life purpose is based on identity and is required for transgenerational, and I will add collective, collaborative healing within organizations, businesses, and politics. And to understand that, we have to understand the transgenerational trauma that brings ancestral guilt and progression in its components. And that is where the controversy with critical race theory is. We don't want to talk about that. I mean, the Eurocentric system. It happened. There's so much information, misinformation out here about the groups I just named. And there was I was looking at Braveheart, not Braveheart. I can't think of it. It was a Native American story. I watch a lot of the different educational. Anyway, I couldn't even watch it because they were showing the massacre. I didn't even, it was a documentary. I had to turn it off. I couldn't do it anymore. So when you have a country like this that continues to celebrate Thanksgiving as a great thing, I have a problem with it. And that's when we talk about collectives. When you can't admit, you see, before you can heal, you have to admit, you have to embrace, you have to talk about it. It's a process. So we could go to mindfulness, we could go to any of these, all of these different, they got Zola out here, that's not healing. All kind of circles, everybody's got a circle, everybody, but the bottom line is know thyself. And that means you got to go back into your family tree. And whatever is there that's ugly, know that that is your strength. That is your strength to begin a process of healing to break generational trauma. Because I will say from my position, based on African-centered thought, and I've gone back to 1600s with my family on both sides, is that the good, bad, and the ugly, I found the strength, and I also came to recognize that white people have that trauma too. It's nothing nice about watching someone get lynched. Every white person did not support that. That doesn't give it a pass because the majority did. And the majority of people who designed these systems were white men in this country. So we have to look at that when we're talking about healing. We have to talk about that. And that's what root psychology does. That's what ancestral healing does. I train people to become ancestral healing facilitators, to be able to go into these areas that are not being addressed. And we talk about racial inequities. What is that? You can't divide racism from classism. Everybody has a program, a culture that has to be respected. And the exchange of those ideas and how we do that is it starts with you individually, because see, when you're able to balance yourself mentally, physically, and spiritually, then you're able to give out. Other than that, you're going to give out chaos. Other than that, you're going to create chaos. Other than that, you're going to disrespect people. You're going to hurt people, and hurt people hurt people. We've heard that. You know, I have a saying for Black people as 5 classifications: Negro, colored, Black, African American, and Afro-American. And Negroes need to take the ego out of Negro. And people get confused with this money situation. It's a sandcastle. Karma is real. It comes. So you have to go inside to be true to yourself and with others, to not get caught up in the insanity cycle of this mental discord or dysfunctions that we're experiencing, because we're in a great time to heal. It is a healing environment. And healers will lead, but it's a process. And it takes a village, right? It takes a combination of all of us from all cultures to do the work. But we have to be honest with each other. We have to support each other. So that's my little sermon for today. Hello?
Yes. Wow. I'm turning on my screen. I mean, like, there's some comments in the chat. I'm sure they are reflecting.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, there's some pretty.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we're gonna keep going. Hopefully we get some time at the end for questions. That was powerful. So I'm gonna go ahead and introduce our next panelist. That's Diana Mena. She's a licensed clinical social worker, first generation Nicaraguan American, raised in Seattle. Diana has a master's in social work from the University of Washington and is a proud owner of Esperanza Counseling and Consulting, PLLC. As a clinical activist, she focuses on trauma, the psychological consequences of oppression, healing, and resilience. She provides consultation on issues of race and social justice with the hope of leaving a better world for the next 7 generations. And you can learn more at esperanzapllc.com. And I want to just add in a little bit I'm sure many of us understand, like, you know, for a lot of us who've been needing support over the last couple of years, especially, and knowing that how much lived experience is so important when you're looking for support. I just want to recognize for these people who are providing this kind of healing and support, like Diana has been doing. What a credible gift, an invaluable gift to the community, but also to just acknowledge that how you've been carrying the burden for this greater community, in addition to what I'm sure your own intimate circles too. I just want to acknowledge and recognize that, and so glad to have you here. And I'll give you the floor.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Professor. That was powerful medicine for today. So thank you for getting us started. I am here as a clinical activist, licensed social worker, daughter of revolutionaries, daughters of immigrants, undocumented parents for a long time. And I'm here for that both that individual healing mentioned by the doctor previously, but also for our collective well-being and our overall healing during this time. The pandemic has been a new experience for all of us, especially for therapists, being on the front lines of the emotional trauma, the somatic trauma that we have been experiencing over the last 2 years. And now the holding of this new normal that is traumatic in its own ways, because our collective grief has not been acknowledged by the systems that be. So my approach to healing and therapy is a decolonial one, where we're reclaiming our traditional practices and our traditional medicine, both as individuals to heal ourselves and our lineages, but also as a collective. And so what we have been taught in our education comes from a colonial lens and a colonial mindset. With each training that I get, I have to take time to decolonize myself and the medicine that I have just been given, because these theories, these practices, these techniques are stolen. They're exploited from our people, they're regurgitated, commodified, and then sold back to us. And many of us experience imposter syndrome when it comes to reclaiming our medicine. We feel like, who are we? This doesn't belong to us. We feel wrong in spaces of medicine, when in fact this is ancestral and this belongs to us. It has just, the name has been changed, it has been taken from us and commodified. So things like EMDR, things like CBT, things like healing circles, these are all our traditional medicine that belong to our people, that belong to us. It is our birthright to reclaim this. And so today I'm going to be talking about one in particular called tapping. And I'm going to guide you through this process because it's pretty effective. It can have a quick impact on our emotional state, on our physical state, and help ground us in the present moment. So tapping will be sold to you as something that was invented by white people in the 1990s, and white men in particular, because white men are the founding fathers of healing according to modern day therapy education. But if we go back 5,000 years, our indigenous ancestors were practicing tapping in a myriad of ways. We can trace back needles to the Amazon. We can trace back needles to Egyptian mummies. We can trace them to Chinese medicine. The Chinese were foundational for this particular technique because they were the first to formalize it. But this doesn't mean it doesn't exist all throughout the indigenous populations of the world, and that we can find the roots back in Africa, which a lot of traditional therapies and medicine making practice erasure of the origin of our medicine in Africa, the origin of our people and our species and our collective in indigenous African ancestors. So I would like to honor all our ancestors across the world because we all have them, and we're all rooted in an indigenous practice. So this is going to be, so what tapping means is that there's this belief, traditional belief, that we have different flow of energy. And so you will find different energetic work throughout our collective, throughout different areas. So for example, laying of the hands, singing, clapping, all of these practices are ways that our communities use to heal themselves and to heal each other in a collective, in an individual and collective way. And so energy flows throughout our body. And if there's any disruption or blockages, then this can get in the way of our well-being. And this leads to disease and illness. So the idea behind tapping, acupuncture, Reiki is to flow, right? Is to interrupt that blockage. And we know that we have both mental, physical blockages as a result of colonialism and other traumas that our communities have experienced. So it's important that we reclaim these practices. So you can Google, like there's all kinds of charts on the different points of tapping, but I'm going to ask you to practice with me. The other thing I'll note is that the other legacy that we received from white supremacy and colonialism is the separation of our minds and our bodies. So our indigenous ancestors understood that our brains, our bodies, our hearts, our souls were one, and that they needed to be in balance with each other. What the white man did was come and they split the mind from the body and the rest of our parts in a way that the only part that became important was the brain and the mind, because I think, therefore I am. And so a lot of our work now, well, now white folks are starting to realize this, and there's a movement towards somatic therapy, which soma means the body, the physical vessel. And so they're starting to reclaim this connection between the brain and the body. But again, our indigenous ancestors understood that these needed to be in balance always. And so when we start thinking about somatics, I want you to start thinking about when our bodies are grounded and rooted, we are able to heal. When our bodies are connected to our minds, we are able to heal more. And when we as individuals heal, we also heal our collective. And so we're going to enter this practice. So tapping again is we're going to hit on different points on our bodies. I'm going to look quite silly modeling this to you. But I'm going to ask you first to choose something in your mind that has been stressful for you, stressful or distressing. Let's say something medium, not something like a full-on crisis, right? Where we're hoping like maybe your partner didn't wash the dishes like they said that they would, or maybe your kid threw a tantrum, or there was traffic, and something that we feel has been stressful, let's say today. And so I want you to think about that, and I want you to think about that emotion. What emotion is it producing for you? Is it sadness? Is it anxiety? Is it anger and rage? And once you are holding that thought and you're holding the emotion, we're going to start this process of tapping, okay? So when I talk about tapping, it's, some people think about it as a karate chop, so you can go like this, or I sometimes use a finger, 2 fingers, but we're really going into this L shape on our hand. So if you can practice that, actually do it while I'm talking. So this is the side of the hand. And here the emotions we're tackling, or the thoughts that we're tackling, are this idea of feeling stuck, having loss or sorrow. Right? And so this is the general one. I love this one because you can just have your hands underneath your desk and be tapping, and no one really has to know what's happening. The other ones are a little bit more obvious. So we're going to go to the top of the head. And then we're going to go to the side of the eyes. And the speed doesn't matter, the pressure doesn't matter. It's just we're in relationship with these points in our body. And then under your eye, this is one I wanted to mention particularly in terms of COVID trauma. This is where we can be in relationship with our fear and our anxiety. So if you're experiencing those things, this is a good spot. And then under our nose, right there in that little valley, that little dip, this is where we experience grief and powerlessness. And then there's more tips. We could go right here in that little line in our chin, the little dip. And then we can do the collarbone, which sometimes I use multiple hands. So this is where we carry worry, general stress, which is really relevant. The next one that I think about is underneath your armpit, about 2 inches, 3 inches. Just go ahead and keep tapping for about 30 more seconds. Okay, and then we can just lay our hands and check in with your mind, with your body, with your heart. And just notice, has anything shifted? Has your pain been relieved? Has your rage calmed down, dispersed? And take a couple deep breaths in and out. And so in conclusion, tapping is not only a reclamation of our Indigenous birthright, it's also a reclaiming of our ancestral Abuelita medicine, our traditional medicine. It is bringing back the connection between our minds and our bodies. It is interrupting our pain, but also our ancestral pain, our intergenerational pain. And healing is a political act. So if we heal, we are working towards our liberation. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I won't even say it. There's just too many things to say. Thank you so much. What a gift to be on here. I'm sure I'm speaking what a lot of people are thinking. So I'm gonna introduce our next panelist. This is amazing. Oh, so Curtiss Calhoun is a Seattle native, proud husband, father, and grandfather. Curtiss graduated from Grover Cleveland High School and attended Seattle Central College when it was still a community college. He has worked in the community for the past 11 years. Curtiss became a certified transformational coach in 2016. In that same year, he founded Curtiss Calhoun Coaching and Consulting, a Seattle-based coaching and consulting firm, with the mission to help individuals and organizations utilize the human essentials to optimize their success. That's S.U.C.C.E.S.S, safety and survival, understanding and growth connection, which is love and acceptance, contribution and creation, esteem, identity, significance, self-direction, autonomy, freedom, and justice, self-fulfillment, and self-transcendence. Curtiss helps individuals and organizations maximize their opportunities and potential. He helps them to prioritize their needs, wants, and desires, expand their thinking, develop new routines and habits to effectively execute their dreams, goals, and determine ideas in life and business gets results. I want to also add to personally that I've gotten to share some space with Curtiss around different projects in the city, and Curtiss is a real leader. And not just a leader as in like being loud, although Curtiss' voice is amazing. But he has, with all the tremendous experience and expertise that he carries, I've always experienced Curtiss to be really thoughtful in his conclusions and recommendations. With those things don't always go hand in hand. Extremely generous and generative with his time and energy. I see him all over the place. And a huge honor and gift. So Curtiss, it's to you, brother.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate that last part. That was great. Peace and good afternoon, everybody. Like Matt said, I'm Curtiss Calhoun. Happy to be here and happy to be and honored to be a part of this esteemed panel, especially with one of my greatest mentors, Dr. Orisade Awodola. just happy to be on here. So with that, I was writing out what I was going to say today, and I'm always concerned that I would never be able to fill out the time that I've been asked to speak. But then usually when I get started talking, I run my mouth and go past time. So I'm going to try not to do that today so they don't mute me and cut off my video. So I'm going to jump right in here. So for me, when they gave us the topic of cultivating community healing, I'm a person who firmly believes in definitions, especially defining what material I'm working with. So even though we may think we know what a word means, sometimes we don't, and we've been using it incorrectly or not effectively as we could use it. So I looked up the word healing, Googled it like most of us do when we're looking for something. And the Oxford Dictionary came up with the process of making or becoming sound and healthy again. For me, I would add becoming whole again. So recently, I had a chance to hear someone speaking around trauma and healing. And they said, once trauma has taken place, trauma takes away power from the person or people who have been traumatized. And the only way to truly heal from that is to restore the power that has been taken. So that's really where the rest of my talk will go today. It was focused in these areas about the power that has been taken away, how to restore that power individually as collectively. I firmly believe in working with individuals. Individuals makes up teams, organizations, groups, communities. So if we can heal individuals, we automatically heal the collective when we heal individuals. So our true power for me, what I came up with, lies really in our self-concept. And for me, again, that definition, self-concept is the collection of beliefs that we have about ourselves. So our self-identity, self-confidence, self-awareness, self-esteem, values, things of that nature. So our power is taken away when we have traumatic experiences or false narratives placed on us. And by default, it decreases our value. So if we start off at 100%, every time a traumatic experience takes place, points are being deducted from that 100. Every time a false narrative is placed on us and we accept that narrative, points are being deducted. So it's important for us to be able to restore those points. Now, there's no point in life where we're just going to always be at 100. Things are constantly coming at us and we're constantly points being deleted. But the whole point is being self-aware that this is taking place and happening and being able to do things to replenish those points or those things as those things are happening as quickly as possible, so it doesn't affect us in a negative way, and especially in a negative way long term. So healing requires us to restore those values like I was talking about. And we cannot expect others to do this for us either. This is something we have to do for ourselves. But as a person who is aware and is doing these things for ourselves, we should be striving to help others do the same. What I focus on is the 7 human essentials. I'm going to pull that up here. Hope you guys can see that. But these are some of the ways that we can restore some of those things that have been taken away through trauma or those false narratives that have been placed on us. Our number one essential need is safety and survival. And safety doesn't just mean physical safety. We also have to protect our mental safety, our emotional safety, and then our spiritual safety. Survival does not only mean, our basic roof over our head, food on the table, clothes on our back. It's also those other areas that I just mentioned. Understanding is a key piece because it's important for us to be understood. If you are married or in a relationship with a significant other, conflicts arise or conflicts heighten when we don't feel we're understood and the other person's not understanding us, or there is a misunderstanding, right? And that causes us to be able to grow and develop from learning those things. Connection to others and being accepted by other people. So that's another piece to that understanding, is that when we're able to understand one another, we're able to develop those connections and be accepted and accept other people for who they are. Contributions and creation, so feeling that we have something of value, again, to contribute to society, contribute to community, and contribute to what has already been created. And then esteem, how we view ourselves and our identity. And that identity is a huge piece, because that's the piece I heard somebody mention earlier, that when new information or when we put that identity out there and it's not accepted, that causes a conflict inside us because we want people to accept us for who we are. So that esteem piece and significance is important. And then self-direction, autonomy, being able to have some say-so in our own future, in our own outcome, being able to have the opportunity to choose for ourselves what is important for us and go after those things. And since we're talking about social justice, freedom and justice, being a part of that. And then self-fulfillment and self-transcendence. So being able not only to go after those things, but fulfill those things for ourselves, to be able to produce and make those things for ourselves. And then along the way, nothing is done smoothly without problems or issues, without challenges or obstacles. So being able to transcend those obstacles and still be able to produce those outcomes for ourselves and others is an important part of that. So like I said before, all of these things are important to us as individuals, but it should be important for us as individuals to be able to want to help others do this. And sometimes we're not. The most important thing that we can do for others when we're trying to cultivate an environment for healing for not only ourselves, but others is, number one, accept them for who they are without judgment. Number two, help them to feel good about themselves. Number three, see the value in them. And number four, help them to see the value in themselves. I've created a checklist that kind of helps to be able to fulfill these 7 human essentials. I'm going to share that now. And this checklist is called Real Lifer. And the term Real Lifer comes from when I was creating this. This came to me one night about 4 o'clock in the morning. I woke up, started typing it into the phone in my notes, got through about 3 or 4 of them, stayed up the rest of the morning, kind of filled out the rest over about a week, and kind of came pretty much to what you see here. There's been some refinements and edits since then, but pretty much what you see here is what came to me. So what happened, how this got named, I was going through some challenges at that time. And I said, wow, this stuff I'm going through is really real. I was a coach and I was trying to do some coaching, and it was coming up with different programs and things like this. But I said, there's nothing more that I could share with somebody than something that is real. And then the lifer piece comes from being committed. You know, you hear like a person who's in jail for life, they call them a lifer. A person who's had a career for a long time, they call them a lifer. Anytime you do anything over a long period of time, you're considered a lifer. So what I wanted to be was a lifer at real life and everyday things that we go through, not this pie in the sky and all this extra stuff. And there is a place for that. But in the beginning, most people are just trying to meet fundamental needs. So they need things met right now that can really help them get through the day, not be thinking out 3 and 4 years. And that's not everybody, but that's a good majority of our society. So I came up with these 12 principles. I'm not going to go through everything on the page. I will go through each principle, not going to explain too much about it. There are 3 bullet points there that kind of explain and help you work through the principles. And then there's one blank because this is designed to be able to help somebody create their own strategy. So those are for people to fill in. So I will give Kai and Roxana access to this and the checklist that goes along with it, as well as the other document I just showed, and they can share that if anybody would like that. But the first one is Real Lifer gives 110% at everything they do. And I think everybody knows why that's important. A real lifer is 100% accountable for everything that happens in their lives, especially what they think, feel, say, and do. A real lifer makes their word bond and keep it impeccable. A real lifer pursues personal growth and development daily. Real lifers set an intention for the day, every day. Real lifers are growth mindset oriented. Real lifers are realistically positive and optimistic. Real lifers are aware of who they are right now with ambitions to improve. Real lifers are conscious of their physical and mental diet. Real lifers get a proper amount of rest and do some sort of physical activity daily. Real lifers are genuinely find ways to connect with people every day. And real lifers look for ways to do good and go the extra mile. And like I said, I can share this document with folks, anybody who wants access. But the important piece to the real lifer is it goes back to fulfilling those 7 human essentials. Those 7 human essentials are important because they determine our quality of life. And if we're aware of those, we can see where healing is necessary and when it is necessary and what points are being deducted and where they're being deducted from. So we know exactly where to fill back into. So by all means, this is no comprehensive presentation of everything possible that can lend to healing. But it is something to want to be able to create a curiosity in you to start to investigate on your own different strategies and pathways for your personal healing journey, and then possibly for the people you work with, because all of us, I think, on here are service providers in some way or form. But thank you again for allowing me to be a part of this panel. Thank you for listening, and I hope you found some value in what was said this morning.
Thank you, Curtiss. Man, everyone's glad that you're here today. This has been incredible. So I'm gonna say thank you and keep rolling with our next panelist, Malie Chanel. First, I'm gonna say, born in Fagotogo, American Samoa, and raised in Saliufi, Apia, and Seattle, Washington. And I'm just gonna read it. This is in the first person and it's beautiful. So I'm just gonna read exactly how it's written. My passion stems from cultural upbringing in my village setting, as well as values instilled in me by my grandparents. There were always village events that requires participation or contributions. We were taught about sharing with our neighbors, inviting passerbyers for meals, or help distributing food to families in your village surroundings during any environmental or health disasters. It became a natural thing to do back home. At a young age, you become accustomed in giving as well as honoring everyone else in unselfish cultural practices. Malie is a community organizer, community outreach on sexual assault and domestic violence. She's a lifelong AIDS volunteer, pageantry organizer for LGBTQ community, Samoan Cultural Day community member, Pacifica Island fashion show organizer, former case manager for ACRS, LTC home care services, family homelessness, feeding project, Meals on Wheels volunteer. Clearly, this is an incredible person with a deep compassion and commitment to service. The kind of devotion, it speaks of real love of people and in serving people. It is a huge recommendation, not just of you, but of the people and the families you come from, the communities that help shape such an incredible vessel. So Malie, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Matt. I get request to make that a little short paragraph. That was long, huh? Thank you so much. I am so honored to be amongst these beautiful and gifted practitioners on this panel. And I am so thankful to be amongst you. So I take this opportunity, to tell you the truth. I was pretty nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I have no knowledge whatsoever or any kind of degrees, whatever, in regards to all of this kind of stuff. But I just told myself, just speak on your experience and my journey. And the term cultivating, like what Curtiss was saying, cultivating healing within our community. So I'd like to start with, how do you cultivate healing in your community? And for me, I say I start with my journey as a survivor of sexual assault, domestic violence. I put myself there and say, how did I overcome that? And when you say healing, I would say the definition of healing is moving forward. We heal ourselves and we move forward. So in order to that, I like to use my elders because it is how I came to be as of who I am today. So as a wellness navigator for our Pacific Island Community Association here in the state of Washington, also a coordinator for our Weaving with Elders program. It is something that I am so passionate about. It's because as a survivor and how I started my healing was always creating that space with our elders. And coming to the States at such a young age, I did not realize when I started going out and being involved in the community, I did not realize how much there is so much nursing home, convalescent home, where a lot of elders are being put in. And I was like, wow, I did not know such, because we come from a culture where we honor our elders. They are the fort. They are the keepers of the cultures. They are the holders of all of our stories and our legends. And all of that weaves within how we identify ourselves and our self-identity and how we are connected to our lands. They are the keepers of everything that we have in our culture. So as a person that myself that coming out and as a survivor, I was able to go back into the sacred space of being with my elders. And that sacred space is a space where you begin. One of the points is talanoa. Talanoa is a nurturing, a face-to-face conversation, an open dialogue. Such can be a format or informal, a meaningful or wellness space to converse, and you learn so much from your elders. And I also wanted to point out having that space with our elders. And I wanted to make a quote from one of our wonderful, knowledgeable keeper of our culture, one of our paramount chief, Tamasese. He quote, "Our elders are not part of a past that has become unproductive. Rather, they are a part of the continuity into the future. And because they are an earlier generation, they are accorded a special place as carrier of prior knowledge." And that's how healing becomes within our community. When we sit down to do a talanoa, and talanoa is where we lay down a lot of the things that we go through, and talanoa is also where we get our history, and we are taught of our genealogy, and we are given a lot of information about healing physically, mentally, emotionally. And that's why we honor our elders when we sit. And to also then to create this program, Weaving with Elders here at our Pacific Island Community Association office, it is always a healing time, because we are now dealing with a lot that's been happening during this pandemic. And we're also dealing with social justice, but it's always a very taboo space. Then when we are spending time with them and creating a lot of social conversation and interacting with them, they are able to always pass down words of wisdom. Because when we seek word of wisdom, our elders have this, we have this word, tofaloloto, meaning deep wisdom. And within that deep wisdom, they're able to encourage us, because prior to colonization, our people were spiritual. We were very spiritual. But then upon Christianity, all of that was taken away. But our people were able to take on the Christian faith. And the Christian faith now has also become the faith base of our Pacific Islander. So when you enter into the sacred space with your elders, they're also able to share with you a lot of scriptural and a lot of biblical encouragement. And I can't take that away for our new generation and us, because it has also become the foundation of our elders. Upon colonization, a lot of our old practices were, what is the word? Uh, uh, Taken away, but they were able to adapt into this spiritual connection. So upon that, with all of the works that we do, it is always an honor that we come together. And I do just want to congratulate this space to our elders, because I felt that always connecting with them has become the healing process for us, because we cherish them and every word and things that they do before they pass on. Because it's just like us. Who do we go to when we need healing? Who do we go to when we need a word of advice to overcome something that faced us in our daily lives? We go to, usually for our culture, we go to our elders, who are the keeper of knowledge and deep wisdom. And their deep wisdom is very profound in terms of telling us and teaching us how to go about, because they were way before us. And I just dedicate this part of my segment to our elders in terms of cultivating healing within our community, because they are the legacy. And when they have departed, it will be us to continue on sharing the medicinal information, the words of remedy, the words of to cultivate healing within our community. So we continue to hold these programs and to do a lot of interaction with our elders, because it becomes a very well it's very soothing and healing to each one of us, because we feel that it is our reward that we honor them. And so we look forward on that program every other Friday that we have to. But we also would like to encourage our generation and the people that to cherish their loved ones, their elders. Don't put them away, but to continue utilizing the knowledge, the wisdom, and the care that they have, because they have not gone away. They will always be with us before they depart. So I like to dedicate this sharing with all of these wonderful panelists in honor of our elders. Fatai, thank you.
Thank you. I'm just take a second here. Malie, Curtiss, Diana, Professor Orisade, what a gift. In some ways, it feels like shining a light on paths that may be like ancient past. And, that's super exciting. It also feels very reminiscent too. It feels very familiar. So it's just such a, and I'm sure you're tracking some of the things in the chat. It's just incredible gift having you all here. So we have a few minutes left, and shoot some questions at you since we have some time. So we've been talking about these paths forward, and I really like, Malia, how you put that, like healing is about moving forward. If we thinking about where are these paths leading to, where are we headed to? First, we grew up in this white supremacist world where we haven't seen a successful generation of like whole and healed and thriving people. What does the future look like? What does it look like? What does healing on their side look like? Dr. Orisade. Oh, you're muted.
I get so excited, I don't even see that. But this has been really wonderful. I just love what everyone said. Curtiss, I'm just so proud of you. And Diana, you were like so on it with the tapping. And Malie, great. My experience here is, where do we go with it, is where we are right now. I was a clinical therapist in DC. What changed my mind and how ancestral healing came about was this 8-year-old girl and her mom. And mom was in a shelter on crack, right? The white psychiatrist, you have these treatment team meetings, right? For those who are clinical, you have these meetings. And he wanted me to sign off on her diagnosed with ADHD. That wasn't what she wanted. I asked her to draw me a picture of what was going on. She drew a stick picture of her holding her mom's hand. All she wanted to do was be with her mom. And he wanted to give her, 8 years old, Ritalin and diagnose her with ADHD, because they don't understand. And even our colleagues in the field that are trained under those systems, like Zola, they're still operating on the same oppressive system. Now, what Diana did is cultural. It is right on what she said. These are our ways. This is where they got it from. The tapping, the circles. I was like so on fire when she was saying it, because I'm like, yes. And that's where I come from as a priestess, and in the tradition of Ifa as African center. It's the primordial energies and understanding how to balance the earth, the cosmos, and the self. And the natives knew that way before. Africans knew that way before. And these ways of ours have been taken and put in a system and named something else by proof, and I'm gonna shut up. Freud borrowed some principles from what's called the Code of Maya and Kemet, and that is how he came up with his series, his psychosexual theory on Osiris and Isis, and the other one is the id, ego, and superego. When we can teach that, but see, our licensure processes don't allow that. If you do that, they'll revoke your license, which is why I refuse to be licensed. I could have renewed my license, but they would have revoked my license. So that's why I said, Diana, you go, girl, you go, and Malie, you too, and storytelling, all of that. That's the healing. That's what we have to do. Okay.
No, you're not done, but we'll open it up to everyone else. Like, what is the future of healing? What does that look like in a healed world? Anyone have eyes to see that far?
So
I say you're looking at it.
It was that last part where we're supporting one another in those ways, really seeing each person that we encounter as whole, being able to help that person. And like I said, accepting that person for who they are, helping that person to accept them for who they are, helping them to see their value and what they bring to this society and community.
And for Malie and Diana, like, I think to Dr. Awodola's point, you are kind of living in the future where you're doing these practices that have been going on for generations. It has nothing to do with the white supremacist culture, and you're doing it as if that's everyday stuff. Do you want to add into this?
Awesome. Well, for me, I say, for me, as an Indigenous, a Native Samoan as well, I think for me, when I first started hearing how we acknowledge the land that we're on, it became such a healing thing for me as well. And I think that when we acknowledge that, it was such a way to move forward to living. We have to live. We have to continue telling our story, because that's our healing. And to see everyone here and to share that, I feel that to move forward, we acknowledge everything. We acknowledge our past, the wrong that has been done to our past, but then we acknowledge ourselves as the Indigenous people from where we come from, and we will continue to share that story moving forward, because we are now in a modern era where there is so much wrong information. But as long as we heal and we move forward, we will continue to pass on our history, our identity, and who we are.
Beautiful.
You know, I like to just say,
I'm not going to cut you off. Go ahead.
my grandson was the one that died at Federal Way High School 3 years ago on a football field. It was all in the news. All of his friends were Samoan. That whole crew, about 30, the family, came to the Catholic Church and sung Kirk Franklin's song, Smile. They did a traditional dance in celebration of his life. And my grandson, of course, was Black, is Black. That's the kind of thing I hear when I hear Malie talking and Diane. That is the kind of collaboration when you can support in a Christian Catholic church your tradition and dress it. And then you sing a gospel song, but you sing your traditional song too. That's the kind of thing that starts to shift the energy.
Thank you. Diana, now I'm going to go to you, Diana.
Yes.
How can I weave us all together again? It's such an honor, you know, like sometimes we think we're doing this work in isolation. And before today, I didn't know any of you all. And the reality is that we exist, right? And we're reclaiming it and we're resisting and we're all working and doing our small part for liberation. As an individual person, I went to grad school because I wanted to heal myself and my own trauma and my family dynamic. And I wanted to understand why my people were how they were. And so I went already with this desire to heal. And I've done my work to heal myself, but also my ancestors backwards. And now as a new mom, I'm mothering my daughter in a new way. And so I think we have interrupted this colonial inheritance. Our existence is resistance. Our existence demonstrates how resilient our people were, that this medicine is still with us, that we know the collectivist values that we have and that we're carrying them forward regardless of what's happening in the external world. And we're carrying that medicine forward. So I think that this ideal world continues that path. And it's about being in right relationship with ourselves and also with each other. And with Pachamama, with Mother Earth, who's so generous with us, whose rain is going to allow for my flowers in May and for my corn in June. And when we are connected with ourselves, with our ancestors, with our descendants, with the Mother Earth and with each other as a collective, I think only good things can come from that. I just heard someone say that gratitude is not a commodity and that our flourishing is mutual, right? So when one flourishes, we all flourish. It was actually a Native woman who wrote Braiding Sweetgrass, which is which is a beautiful tribute to Indigenous science and knowledge. So I'll leave it at that. I think to see you all flourishing, to see your contributions to the community, to the collective, brings peace to my heart. And I think that's reciprocity will show up in future generations as it is now.
Yeah, so into this. This is I knew this was gonna be good, but like I've been chicken skin and on the verge of tears this whole time. We have a question from Michelle, who's been Michelle, shout out to you. You've been like a consistent part of this community actively through the whole thing. So thank you so much for that. And your question is, what suggestions can you offer to persons who may not be able to access your services, who may be living abroad, who have financial insecurities, maybe being unhoused? The question, what can be done right now? What advice do you have for people who may not be able to just jump on a meeting with you, but still we need to move towards our healing like right now? Any suggestions for that, for any of you?
I mean, it's beautiful to see my sister Roxana like doing all this coordination and collaboration across all these fields and settings. So I think COVID has made it so much more accessible, like online, for us to come together and share our wisdom. I know many of us are contributing on a voluntary basis, like sharing this knowledge with a greater collective. So that would be my hope, that person would be able to connect with this.
Thank you, Diana. Anyone else have some advice for Michelle and others about what advice do you have right now? What can we start doing right now for our healing? Or is it, I see you're unmuted.
Uh-huh.
You have something to say.
Yes, I always do. I was trying to register for
Nice. Yes.
For the last one. The question is, what did you say? What
advice do you have for people right now who want to move forward in their healing? And some people may have like restrictions.
Yeah. Well, yes, I see that. My advice is to get involved with a group of people that are like-minded, healing circles, whatever it is, you join that group of people and find out what people are doing. You like Diana, what's her organization and how do we promote and support each other? That's how you begin, but it all begins with the you. And it all begins with the big W, will. Do you have the will to heal? Because will alone is great and everything gives away before it. But if you're not willing and you're not open-minded, then it's not going to happen no matter what you do. We can always drop seeds in the earth and they'll stir, meaning those seeds will stir in your soul. And maybe as a result, you will have a spiritual awakening, because at this point, it's all about having a spiritual awakening. You have to be spiritual. And when you have that awakening, then you become grounded in whatever your path is. I ain't talking about religion. I'm just saying spirituality. Like go hug a tree, go talk to the ocean, look at the sun, breathe. Two things we can't live without: water and air. Drink a glass of water and breathe. That's how I go.
Thank you.
That's what I do. That's what I tell my clients and students.
I'm sure you're gonna get more reaching out to you too. But we have like Roxana's coming in too. She's probably asking us to like shut it down. But we'll give either Malie or Curtiss the last word on this.
Malie, you? No. So I was just going to agree with Orisade. Something that you can do right now is find a safe space where you can really share and open up. We've been doing circles and with Orisade's methods. And when you provide space for people, you're surprised how quickly they change and how quickly it lightens them. They're able to release a burden. So that would be number one. And then the second thing was, like Orisade was saying, you have to find, I believe you have to find something with her will, the will to do it. You have to find a motivation outside of yourself. A lot of times there's a lot of things we won't do for ourselves, but if we find somebody or something to do it for, that will give us the strength and the discipline to stay committed and dedicated to that healing process. So definitely find something outside of yourself to motivate your healing journey.
So we're going to hand it to Roxana to close this up, but I will just say thank you. I know all our grandparents, probably radically different circumstances, and who knows what they would have done if they all came together in a room like this. But I am so reminded, even my own difference, of who I am, just from what you all been sharing about who you are. So thank you so much. So grateful. Roxana?
Yes, thank you, Matt. Thank you all so much. I know my heart and my ancestors are really happy to hear from you all, to be in this sacred space with you all. Thank you so much for your gifts of storytelling, of truth, of healing, of practices. I really, really appreciate y'all. I'm actually going to read something because I feel very compelled hearing you all. And this comes from a book called Inflame, Deep Medicine and the Anatomy of Injustice by Dr. Rupa Marya and Raj Patel. So it says, to decolonize in Lakota is ki Lakota. Ki means return to our own. And Lakota, the people, the humans. To Tipi Siwin Tolam, the Lakota language of vitalists, this translates to a return to ourselves, our true selves. And that is the radical promise of decolonizing. It is to become humble once more in the face of life's greater intelligence. It is to create a community of care that can heal what has been broken, in which we can all take part, with fire in our hearts to cool our veins, our minds, our communities, and our planet, with recognition of how dependent we are on water, wind, earth, fire, and the entire web of life. It is to become human again. So I just wanted to thank you all so much for providing this space for all of us to be in touch with our humanity, because that is definitely something colonization ripped us away from. And I hope that the participants and folks that heard gained some perspective, some knowledge, a tool, something to keep them going as we journey through these very difficult times, but also through these very creative and innovative times as we try to move into a new way of being, because we know that's why we're here on this earth living through this pandemic, is to move and usher ourselves into a new way of being. With that being said, the next speaker series event is called Cultivating Community Possibilities. What are the possibilities that exist for our communities, for our collectives, for our organizations as we move forward? So we'll be hearing from a couple of folks, some amazing cultural workers in our communities, about the possibilities that we can cultivate in our communities. And so I will see you all hopefully on November 18th as the finale of our speaker series. And we hope to see you all there. And then of course, there's a survey. If y'all could take it, give us some feedback on the speaker series at today's event, that would be really helpful for us. But other than that, y'all, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone. Gracias, mil gracias to everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.